June 6, 1944, 4:45 a.m. Normandy coast, France. The sea is black and restless. Landing craft slam against the waves as soldiers crouch low, gripping rifles, knuckles white. Engines roar, men vomit, some pray, some stare forward, silent, already exhausted before the first shot is fired. You can almost feel the weight in their chests. This is the moment history remembers. Maps will later show arrows pushing inland. Beaches marked with code names. Front lines drawn in thick red and blue strokes. But none of those maps show what is really happening right now. Behind these men, far beyond the horizon, thousands of things have already decided whether they live or die. Fuel shipped months ago. Boots produced in factories thousands of miles away. Training that began years earlier on quiet fields in America and Britain. Convoys that crossed oceans without being sunk. Replacement units already waiting, already trained, already fed. This invasion does not begin on the beach. It begins in places no map ever shows. As the ramps drop and machine gun fire erupts, chaos explodes into motion. Some men fall instantly. Others sprint forward, slipping on wet sand, weighed down by gear chosen by planners who will never see this shoreline. And still, they keep coming. Wave after wave. Not because courage is endless. Because supply is. German defenders fire relentlessly. Their positions are strong. Their guns are lethal. On paper, they should be able to hold. But something feels wrong. The attackers do not thin out. They do not slow down. They do not stop. You can almost sense the confusion spreading through German ranks. This is not a single assault. It is a sustained pressure that does not ease. For every unit destroyed, another appears. For every vehicle lost, another rolls forward. This is not just a battle. It is the visible edge of something far larger. World War II is often remembered as a clash of armies, generals, and decisive battles. Stalingrad, Midway, Normandy. Names burned into memory and carved into maps. But the war was not decided by what moved on those maps. It was decided by what never appeared on them at all. The factories that never slept. The training camps hidden deep inland. The rail lines repaired overnight. The warehouses stacked with parts, fuel, food, and ammunition. The invisible war. On the German side, soldiers fight bravely. Their tactics are sharp. Their experience is real. But even here, cracks are forming, a gun runs dry, and the resupply is late. A vehicle breaks down and there is no spare part. A unit takes losses and replacements do not arrive. Those failures do not show up as dramatic defeats. They show up as exhaustion. And exhaustion kills armies quietly. The Allies learned this lesson early. In the United States, war planning was never just about defeating the enemy. It was about sustaining effort longer than the enemy could endure. Training camps multiplied across the country. Millions of men were cycled through drills, not for glory, but for readiness. Factories did not just produce weapons. They produced systems, interchangeable parts, standardized equipment, procedures designed so that when something broke, it could be fixed anywhere. You can almost feel the difference in philosophy. Germany planned for victory through speed and decisive blows. The Allies planned for a war that would grind on, day after day, year after year. And grinding wars are not won by brilliance alone. They are won by preparation. As the fighting rages on the beaches, more ships arrive. More men. More vehicles. More supplies. The flow does not slow, even under fire. This is the part no battlefield map captures. Every soldier who steps onto the sand represents thousands of people behind him. Workers, trainers, sailors, engineers, clerks, drivers, people whose names will never be remembered, but whose work is felt in every bullet fired and every step forward. German commanders watch the invasion unfold and begin to understand something unsettling. This is not an operation that can be repelled by tactical skill alone. It is backed by an engine they cannot reach. And that engine does not care how brave the defenders are. It only cares whether it can keep running. As the sun rises over Normandy, the outcome of the day is still uncertain. Men will die. Positions will be lost and retaken. nothing feels guaranteed. But beneath the smoke and chaos, a deeper truth is already set in motion. This war will not be decided by who holds this beach. It will be decided by who can keep fighting long after the maps have been redrawn. And the forces that decide that outcome are already moving. Quietly. Relentlessly. Far from the front. September 1942. 11:30 a.m. Detroit, Michigan. The factory floor shakes with sound. Presses slam steel into shape. Sparks burst and fade. Conveyor belts never stop moving. Men and women stand shoulder to shoulder, hands blackened with oil, eyes fixed on the work in front of them. An aircraft engine rolls past. Then another. Then another. You can almost feel the rhythm of it. Not frantic, not rushed, relentless. This is not a battlefield, but it decides one. Thousands of miles away, soldiers will climb into planes powered by these engines. They will trust them with their lives. And if one fails, another will be ready to replace it. That is the difference. World War II is often framed as a clash of armies, but it is just as much a clash of systems. One side fights with what it has. The other fights with what it can replace. The United States turns distance into advantage. Its factories are beyond the reach of enemy bombers. Its raw materials arrive by rail and river without interruption. Its workforce is enormous and still growing. Every day, production targets rise. And every day, they are met. You can almost sense the confidence building, not in speeches, but in schedules. Across the Atlantic, the situation is very different. In Germany, factories operate under constant threat. Air raid sirens interrupt shifts. Assembly lines halt. Workers scatter to shelters, then return to damaged machines. Power grids fail. Transportation networks fracture. A tank produced today may never reach the front. A gun completed tomorrow may sit idle for lack of ammunition. None of this shows up on a battlefield map. But soldiers feel it immediately. On the Eastern Front, German units begin to conserve fuel not because they want to, but because they must. Training hours are cut. Maintenance is deferred. Vehicles that should be repaired are cannibalized for parts. The system is eating itself to stay alive. Meanwhile, Allied training camps expand quietly. In the American Midwest, young men drill endlessly. Rifle ranges stretch across open land. Mock villages are built and destroyed. Officers rotate in and out, refining methods, correcting mistakes, passing on lessons learned overseas. You can almost feel the patience in the process. These soldiers are not being trained for a single battle. They are being trained to be replaced. When casualties occur, new units arrive already familiar with equipment, already drilled in procedure. They are not perfect, but they are prepared. And preparation compounds. The British add their own layer, decades of naval experience, an intelligence network refined under pressure, a logistical mindset shaped by empire. Ports are organized, shipping schedules optimized, cargo is tracked with ruthless efficiency. Every crate matters. Every delay is measured. Every improvement is shared. Germany cannot match this scale. It tries. Forced labor is introduced. Production is dispersed into smaller facilities. Underground factories are carved out of mountains. But these measures add complexity instead of efficiency. Parts arrive late. Quality suffers. Coordination breaks down. A system designed for speed is being asked to endure. It cannot. You can almost feel the contrast when Allied forces land in North Africa, then Italy, then France. The pattern repeats. Initial resistance is fierce. German units fight hard, sometimes brilliantly. But then the flow overwhelms them. More trucks. More fuel. More ammunition. More men. The Allies do not need to win every engagement. They only need to avoid running out of resources. Germany does not have that luxury. Every loss hurts more. Every destroyed vehicle is harder to replace. Every trained soldier killed represents months or years that cannot be recovered. The war becomes asymmetric in the most dangerous way. One side bleeds. The other side regenerates. From the front, soldiers sense this before commanders admit it. Allied troops know that if they survive today, support will arrive tomorrow. German troops increasingly fight, knowing that what they lose may be gone forever. That knowledge changes behavior. It changes morale. It changes outcomes. World War II does not turn on a single battle or a single decision. It turns on accumulation, on whether effort can be sustained. Maps show where armies move. They do not show whether those armies can keep moving. By late 1943, the answer is becoming impossible to ignore. One side has built an engine that grows stronger under strain. The other is running on fumes. And the front lines are about to feel the full weight of that imbalance. Because what has been built behind the lines is now ready to be unleashed everywhere at once. July 1943. At 10 p.m. Fort Benning, Georgia. The heat is crushing. Sweat soaks through uniforms as men jog across open ground, rifles slung, boots kicking up red dust. Instructors shout orders that cut through the heavy air. A whistle blows, someone stumbles, someone else pulls him back into line. No one stops. You can almost feel the fatigue settling into muscle and bone. This place will never appear on a battlefield map. And yet, it may matter more than any front line in Europe. World War II consumed soldiers at an industrial scale. Divisions were shattered, battalions vanished. Entire units ceased to exist in weeks. The war did not reward bravery alone. It rewarded replacement. The Allies understood this early. Training was not treated as a preliminary phase. It was treated as a continuous process. Men arrived, men trained, men left, more arrived to take their place. The system never paused. At Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, Camp Pendleton, and hundreds of other installations, soldiers were not trained to win a single battle. They were trained to survive a sequence of them. Weapons handling was drilled until it became instinct. Movement under fire was practiced again and again. Officers were taught not just how to attack, but how to absorb losses and continue. You can almost feel the mindset being shaped. Mistakes here are corrected, not punished, because mistakes overseas cost lives. Instructors returning from combat adjust the training immediately. A tactic that failed in Sicily is revised before the next class finishes. A lesson learned in Tunisia is applied in Normandy months later. Experience does not die with the men who earned it. It is recycled. Germany's training system cannot do this. As the war drags on, training time is cut shorter. Fuel shortages limit exercises. Ammunition for practice is rationed. Veteran instructors are pulled back to the front because they are needed there. The pipeline narrows. New recruits arrive less prepared than those before them, and they are sent into combat faster. The system begins feeding the front with men who have not been fully shaped for what awaits them. You can almost sense the difference in the field. Allied units rotate. Men are pulled back after months of combat. Some are reassigned as instructors. Their scars become lessons. Their mistakes become warnings passed on to thousands. German units rarely rotate. They fight until they are destroyed. This is not failure of courage. It is a failure of structure. Behind the lines, Allied training camps continue expanding. Specialized schools appear for armor, artillery, logistics, engineering, communications. Each role is refined, standardized, and multiplied. A soldier is not just trained to fight. He is trained to fit into a system. That system expects losses. It plans for them. And because it plans for them, it survives them. By the time Allied armies push deep into Europe, the difference is unmistakable. Units operate with procedures that feel rehearsed even under chaos. Replacement soldiers integrate quickly because equipment, commands, and expectations are familiar. The war feels less improvisational, more mechanical. German units increasingly rely on improvisation to survive. Shortages force creativity. Field repairs replace proper maintenance. Commanders adjust plans daily based on what they lack, rather than what they intend. Improvisation can win moments. It cannot win years. You can almost feel how the balance has shifted, not in a dramatic collapse, but in a steady erosion of capability on one side and a steady renewal on the other. The training grounds never stop producing. They never make headlines. They never appear in victory parades. But every man who steps onto the front line carrying a rifle he knows how to use, following orders he understands, supported by a structure designed to sustain him, is proof that the war is being decided somewhere else first. The battlefield shows the result. The training ground creates it. And as Allied forces prepare for the final push into Germany, The invisible army behind the lines is larger, fresher, and better prepared than anything the Reich can still produce. The maps are about to change rapidly, but the reason they change will not be found on them. It will be found in places like this. Quiet fields, endless drills, and a system built to outlast catastrophe. December 1944, 6:20 a.m. Somewhere near Bastogne, Belgium. The road is frozen solid. Engines cough in the cold as trucks inch forward, headlights dimmed, canvas covers stiff with ice. Drivers grip the wheel through numb fingers, eyes fixed ahead. The trees are silent. Too silent. You can almost feel the tension tightening in the chest. This is not a battle line. It is a lifeline. German forces have launched their last major offensive in the west. Tanks push through the Ardennes. Artillery pounds thin Allied lines. On maps, arrows surge forward. For a moment, it looks like the war has turned. But the maps lie. Because while German armor advances, something behind it is already failing. Fuel. A panzer without fuel is just steel. German planners know this. They gamble everything on capturing Allied supply depots. The offensive depends on stealing what they can no longer produce or deliver themselves. It is a desperate plan. And desperation has consequences. Allied units fall back in places, but the supply system bends without breaking. Roads are damaged, yet repaired. Bridges are destroyed, yet replaced. Convoys reroute automatically. Orders change, but the flow continues. You can almost feel the difference in mindset. Allied logistics is not built around perfection. It is built around recovery. When Bastogne is surrounded, maps show a pocket. What they do not show is the airfield schedules being rewritten, cargo planes lining up, pilots calculating risk versus necessity. Supplies do not stop. They fall from the sky. Food, ammunition, medical gear, fuel, enough to hold. German units outside Bastogne begin to stall. Fuel runs low, vehicles are abandoned, tanks are blown up by their own crews to avoid capture. The offensive slows, not because of enemy fire alone, but because movement becomes impossible. You can almost feel the momentum draining away. This pattern repeats across the war. In North Africa, German units outmaneuver early Allied forces but cannot sustain the push. Supply lines stretch too far. Ports are limited. Convoys are intercepted. Every mile forward makes survival harder. In the Pacific, island hopping works not because islands are weakly defended, but because supply can follow the attackers and be denied to the defenders. In the Soviet Union, entire armies collapse not just from defeat, but from starvation, exposure, and exhaustion when supply fails. Firepower wins engagements. Logistics decides whether those victories matter. The Allies understand this so deeply that they turn logistics into a weapon. The Red Ball Express moves supplies across France at staggering speed. Drivers work around the clock. Trucks wear out and are replaced. Routes are refined daily. It is not elegant. It is effective. German logistics cannot compete. Bombing has shattered rail networks. Fuel shortages grow critical. Skilled transport personnel are gone. Horse-drawn wagons reappear where trucks once rolled. You can almost feel how modern war is slipping backward for one side. Every offensive decision now includes a silent question. Can we supply this? For the Allies, the answer is usually yes. For Germany, it is increasingly no. And when the answer is no, strategy collapses. Armies do not fight on courage alone. They fight on calories, spare parts, medical care, and fuel. They fight on whether a wounded man can be evacuated and whether a broken vehicle can be fixed. Those things never appear on maps. But they decide whether arrows move forward or stop forever. As winter grips Europe and the German offensive fails, the truth becomes undeniable. The Reich is not losing because its soldiers are weak. It is losing because its lifelines are gone. And once lifelines are cut, no amount of bravery can reconnect them. The final phase of the war is approaching. And it will move faster than anyone expects. Because one side can move at will, and the other can barely move at all. January 1945, 8 a.m. Willow Run, Michigan. The doors open and the sound pours out. Metal on metal. Engines testing. footsteps moving in practiced rhythm. The vast interior stretches farther than the eye can see, a controlled chaos of motion and purpose. A bomber moves along the line. Then another. Then another. You can almost feel the scale pressing in. This is not production as Germany once understood it. This is not craftsmanship refined by hand. This is time, manufactured in bulk. Every aircraft completed here represents months saved somewhere else. Every standardized part means faster repair. Every worker knows one task perfectly because the system does not depend on individual brilliance. It depends on repetition. World War II is often described as a race for technology, but it is just as much a race for tempo. How fast losses can be replaced, how quickly mistakes can be corrected, how relentlessly pressure can be applied. The Allies win that race on factory floors like this. American industry does not simply build weapons. It builds predictability. Schedules are met. Output is measured. Delays are identified and eliminated. When one plant slows, another compensates. The war becomes something that can be planned. Germany never achieves this stability. As Allied bombing intensifies, German production becomes reactive. Factories move underground. Output scatters. Coordination collapses. A tank built in one place waits weeks for an engine from another. A jet produced without spare parts becomes a liability instead of an asset. You can almost feel the difference in philosophy. The Allies simplify designs so they can be produced faster. Germany complicates designs to chase performance. The result is devastating. One side floods the battlefield with good enough machines. The other delivers brilliant machines in ones and twos. Factories also shape morale. Allied soldiers know that if their equipment is lost, it will be replaced. If a vehicle is damaged, another will arrive. If an aircraft is shot down, another is already rolling off the line. That knowledge matters. It allows commanders to take risks. It allows planners to think weeks ahead instead of days. It allows armies to push forward without constantly looking over their shoulder. German soldiers increasingly feel the opposite. A destroyed vehicle may never be replaced. Ammunition shortages force restraint. Equipment is reused beyond its limits. Repair becomes improvisation. The war narrows. Time, once Germany's ally in early victories, becomes its enemy. Factories in the United States operate beyond the reach of enemy fire. Raw materials arrive uninterrupted. Labor shortages are solved through scale. Women fill roles never before available to them. Training programs turn civilians into specialists. The machine grows stronger the longer the war lasts. That is the decisive imbalance. Wars are not just contests of strength. They are contests of endurance. By early 1945, Allied production overwhelms every remaining German capability. Aircraft dominate the skies. Vehicles fill the roads. Supplies flow without pause. The battlefield feels inevitable now. German commanders fight on, but the margins are gone. Every loss is permanent. Every retreat compounds the next. There is no recovery cycle left. Factories once symbolized national power. Now they symbolize survival. And only one side still has them. As Allied forces cross the Rhine, maps change rapidly. Cities fall. Front lines collapse. The end comes quickly. But it does not come suddenly. It comes after years of invisible work. Work done far from the front. Work done without glory. Work done with schedules, quotas, and patience. The war ends not because of a single battle, but because one side ran out of time, and the other learned how to make it. Maps will remember where armies moved. History must remember why they could. April 1945. 6:30 a.m. Somewhere west of Berlin. The road ahead is crowded. Not with defenders. With refugees. Carts piled with belongings. Civilians walking beside bicycles with flat tires. Old men, women, children, faces hollow with exhaustion. They move slowly, glancing at the sky more than the road. You can almost feel the silence pressing down. This is not what defeat looks like on a map. Maps still show units, divisions, lines of resistance. Commanders still issue orders. Radios still crackle with instructions that assume movement, coordination, response. But none of that reflects reality anymore. Because behind the German front lines, there is nothing left holding them together. No fuel reserves. No repair depots. No replacement units waiting. No factories producing at scale. The war has already ended where no one was looking. Allied columns roll forward with a confidence that feels almost mechanical. Vehicles move in sequence. Supply trucks follow combat units as naturally as shadows. Engineers repair bridges before anyone asks if it can be done. It is not courage alone. It is certainty. You can almost sense how different this feels from earlier campaigns. There is no hesitation about how far units can advance. No fear of outrunning supply. No need to pause and rebuild strength. The system absorbs distance effortlessly. German units, by contrast, collapse not always from combat but from isolation. Units lose contact with headquarters. Ammunition runs out. Fuel disappears. Orders arrive that cannot be executed because movement is impossible. A retreat that cannot be supplied becomes a rout. Officers who once maneuvered brilliantly now spend their time searching for food and transport. Entire formations surrender not because they have been defeated in battle, but because there is no reason left to continue. The realization spreads unevenly. Some still believe in last stands. Others cling to orders that no longer reflect conditions. But among soldiers, the understanding is clear. The war was lost long before this moment. It was lost when supply lines failed, when training pipelines dried up, when factories burned faster than they could be rebuilt. Those losses never appeared on maps, but they decided everything that followed. As Allied troops enter German cities, they encounter intact weapons abandoned for lack of fuel, artillery without shells, vehicles stripped for parts. Equipment that once represented power now stands silent and useless. You can almost feel the irony. Germany still has weapons. It no longer has war. The Allies, meanwhile, continue to operate as if the system itself is advancing. Replacement units arrive even as victory approaches. Supplies are stockpiled not just for combat but for occupation. Planning extends beyond the war because the machinery does not stop when fighting ends. That is the final contrast. One side built for decisive moments. The other built for continuity. When the German surrender finally comes, it feels sudden only to those who were watching the front lines. To anyone who understood the invisible war behind them, the outcome has been inevitable for months, even years. World War II was not decided in the moments we remember most. It was decided quietly. In warehouses, on training fields, in factories and rail yards, on roads like this one, filled not with arrows, but with people trying to survive the collapse of a system. Maps will always simplify war. They must. But they also lie. Because the forces that truly decide wars rarely move in straight lines, rarely wear uniforms, and rarely receive credit. They work in the background. They endure. They keep going long after others cannot. And when the shooting finally stops, it is not because the map says so. It is because the invisible war has already been won. August 1945. Washington, D.C. The war is over. Flags hang from buildings. Headlines announce victory. Parades roll through streets filled with cheering crowds. Soldiers return home thinner, quieter, changed forever. This is how history remembers the end. But inside government offices, warehouses, and planning rooms, the people who truly shaped the outcome are already looking ahead, not to the next battle, to the next system. You can almost feel the calm that comes after understanding. World War II did not end because one army finally broke another on the battlefield. It ended because one side could no longer function as a war-fighting organism. Its supply arteries were gone. Its training pipelines were dry. Its factories were silent. The body could no longer move. The Allies understood something fundamental long before the last shots were fired. Wars are not won by moments. They are won by margins. A little more fuel. A few more trained crews. One more repaired bridge. Another shipment arriving on time. None of it dramatic. All of it decisive. This is why maps fail us. Maps show where armies were. They do not show how those armies stayed alive. They do not show the clerk tracking parts. The driver running a route at night. the instructor drilling recruits who would replace the fallen, the factory worker tightening the same bolt for the 1,000th time. Those people never appear in history books. Yet without them, every general, every battle, every victory collapses into nothing. Germany lost World War II, not because its soldiers stopped fighting, but because its system stopped sustaining them. Brilliance could not overcome exhaustion. Innovation could not replace infrastructure. Courage could not substitute for fuel, food, and time. The Allies did not win because they were perfect. They won because they planned for imperfection. They expected losses. They designed systems to absorb them. They accepted that war would be long, ugly, and wasteful. And then they built something that could survive all three. This is the lesson that carried forward into the modern world. Every major military power after World War II studied not just battles but logistics. Not just weapons but production. Not just soldiers but training cycles. Because the invisible war never went away. It only became more complex. Even today, conflicts are decided less by what we see on the news and more by what happens quietly behind it. Supply chains, maintenance, training, replacement, endurance. World War II was the first global war where this truth became undeniable. The battles we remember were real. The sacrifices were immense. The courage was extraordinary. But the outcome was shaped somewhere else first. In places no one visited. On roads no one photographed. In factories no one celebrated. That is where the war was decided. Not on the maps. But in everything the maps left out,